Okay, so today on Hindustan Astrology, we have a very special guest for our Interviews with the Guru series. We have Laura Eisenhower. She is the great granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower, but most importantly, she's a very important Western astrologer, and she's somebody that I really look to for guidance. She really speaks on the return of the divine feminine and connecting with Gaia. And recently, she's done a lot of work on the return of the cosmic ether. So welcome, Laura.
Hello, Katya. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So let's just, talk a little bit. I mean, a lot of people know about your work with all of the conferences that you do and speaking on, lots of different topics. But basically, a lot of people know about you through the Secret Space Program and speaking about Mars, of course, and about current events and where things are going. But also, as an astrologer, I really get a lot out of your information when you talk about the eons and especially the outer planets and these generational cycles that are happening. So, maybe just, give us a little bit of background from your perspective.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I find astrology is a great tool to really understand a lot about our galactic history, how the planets have changed over time, and where some of the sticky stuff can be that keeps us maybe looping in ancestral patterns or just programmings. I've come to discover from just doing so many readings how important the outer planets are because they're so initiatory. And when we look at our society and how when we're going through like a huge growth period, it can be very unsettling. It can be very uprooting, and it can throw people in a huge funk that can be misunderstood for a mental illness. It can be misunderstood for a nervous breakdown. And we're really missing in our culture the ability to initiate with these outer planets that actually help to advance us, expand us, and connect us with our ability to upgrade our DNA.
Yes. And I've been hearing that so much in so many different sectors of my life, and it's just popping up online all the time. It's happening.
What was that last bit? You were a little garbled.
DNA upgrade that's happening.
Right. So when it comes down to just the divine feminine, I mean, the importance of polarity integration, understanding the need to harmonize these energies within ourselves to get the right and left and greater circulation, to connect with the ether that's available now, is kind of what I've been focusing on, because we've been dealing with, reversals, and we've been in this fallen system that is very vampiric. And there's a lot of dark technologies that seek to steal our energy and engineer artificial timelines that the charts can really reveal, if a person is very vulnerable to or susceptible to. And so when I see a person's chart, when their personal planets aren't connecting with the outer planets, to me, that's where the work needs to be done. Because there's a misunderstanding sometimes with the downloads coming in, or going through the dark night of the soul and having to face the shadow stuff. And then Neptune, which is all about multidimensional spiritual energy and the creative imaginations, can sometimes get locked into these interfering forces or archonic parasites that can create sort of a haunting of the imagination instead of our ability to tap into the dream realms and manifest what we'd like to see. So I like to, focus on a lot of different things in my talks, but kind of have astrology as a backdrop to validate, just the process that a lot of us are in. I mean, we're all at different levels, but I mostly focus on the Saturn moon matrix and the artificial aspect of the moon and the artificial rings as a broadcasting system that keeps our junk DNA as junk and simulates this reality that we tend to misunderstand for a real human experience, when it actually is incredibly limited. We just have amnesia, right? So astrology can really help open up what we might be asleep to and see a much larger picture. So I definitely like to include it, and the Venus transits and what that means, and the return of, the mother energy. And even though we have epidemics breathing down our neck and all sorts of freaky things that give a person a kind of a sense of doom or gloom, or even like a survival trigger or response. We're in a place in this human experience that is far different than where we've been in, many thousands of years. But the problem is, if the vibration stays too dense, it's not that we're going to miss the window, but we really are like at a crossroads, and we need to take this time incredibly seriously to just really get our heads together and remember who we are, because, we're already in 2020, and it's really critical. We begin to align with these cosmic and natural laws to begin to unfold into who we truly are, instead of be caught in this trap that really undermines these abilities that we've just lost connection with, almost to the point where people don't even believe they exist.
Right. Yeah. And this year, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction we have, this is the game changer. This is the point of growth and manifestation. And you're right in it. You've got the configuration that shows that you are a leader for this this growth that's happening right now. And,
is that what my chart says?
Yeah. We'll go over it later. I won't reveal it online or anything, but but the way your planets are sidereally, you're like, right, you are a leader of this. And I love how you talk about, staying with Gaia, that we're here to ground these
You're a little bit garbled again.
Oh, okay.
Right. But the last thing I heard was about staying with Gaia.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the whole concept of, the core of the planet and the mother energy returning that has not been here for thousands of years due to cataclysms and just massive manipulation, the rewriting of ancient texts, and really just the wiping out of the ancient wisdom that can help us to understand that we can be Christed beings. We can embody what the masters have understood. So it's a very interesting time looking at, this kind of history and where we are now, and how it's a very grounded experience. What comes up from the earth, what comes up from the earth energies, how the cosmic and earth energies are mixing to restore and repair the tree of life template, and how we, can alter the grids in a positive way, because there's been this artificial overlay that has created, digression, aging, and this recycling. And I know, some people talk about the false light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I don't go that far, because, I don't want to define people's experiences if they do have a near-death experience or out-of-body experience. I don't want to be like, oh, that's just archons. I mean, I think there's both. I think we're dealing with the false light, and we're dealing with the organic. But for us to really find the organic light, we can't be afraid of our own dark. If we deny parts of ourselves, and if we don't explore those parts of ourselves, it's very easy for something to stand in place of it. And so my hope and goal is that we'll attain human sovereignty without losing integrity. Having freedom, but be responsible with that freedom, and just be, all about making the world a better place. There's also a lot that wants to switch on when we talk about upgrading DNA, that when we begin to reach those states, that's when the psychic attack increases. And that can be very, very defeating for people that have worked hard to, achieve certain levels. And then there might be some attack, or a relationship might be attacked, or a negative experience with somebody might happen, and really throw that person back to, ground zero. And so, yeah, I mean, when we look at the electromagnetic, I see like Pluto, Uranus, Pluto magnetic, Uranus electric, and then Neptune is bursting open like our multidimensional self. And so like you're saying, the planetary alignments, the game changer, to have Saturn next to Pluto, and then Jupiter coming in with a connection with Uranus, it's like, we have to let go of old paradigm energies, the South Node being in Capricorn too. If we don't release that stuff, I think that's what is potentially going to make us sick, and why we are being shown this possible threat to our health, because these outer planets are in earth signs, except for Neptune, Taurus, Uranus, Pluto, Saturn. And we're just really being pushed to the edge. And it's just like in our own lives, if we don't find our higher awareness and our wisdom in a certain situation, it can create conflict and sickness. And the stress can be so much that that can undermine our immune system versus anything else. I mean, aren't we exposed to so many viruses as is? I mean,
Well, and also, sidereally, the North Node is in the same place that it was in 1983, and that's this is back around. I'm really curious how when you're doing a client's chart, let's go through each planet, like what you have noticed, because, we can all look at the textbooks and we can see, okay, this is what Uranus means. The way they play out in the chart can be so different. So let's hear your take. Let's start with Uranus.
Well, Uranus to me is just like shock, and shock can be a great epiphany and breakthrough and moment of clarity. To me, Uranus helps to connect us with our higher mind and the 0-point unified field, but it doesn't care about our comfort level. So if Uranus wants to rip us away from attachments that don't serve us, it doesn't care if we're ready or not. It's just going to do it, right? So it can be very, very difficult for people to understand what that means and where it's coming from in a culture that is basically in duality, dictating to us what are successes and failures, right? So if something gets ripped away, we have to deal with other people's projections. And if that person is actually beginning to connect with that greater message that Uranus brings, it can be like a transition with grace and ease. But if they get caught in other people's opinions and just the way society views any lack of so-called stability or any massive change or ending or drastic shock that happens, it's usually projected on as some level of misfortune, when really Uranus is helping us to move beyond the constrictive nature of Saturn. And so in a lot of charts, when I see Uranus and Saturn in like a trine aspect or a harmonious aspect, that's really good to see very different energies working well together. So that's always like a good sign.
Yeah, it's like the workable, it's the electric force, right? I mean, Uranus is electricity and Saturn is the worker. So, can also indicate an engineer,
Right, exactly. So Uranus also is known as, the rebel, the great liberator, people who are somewhat rebellious or unconventional, very authentic and true to themselves. And so that's like a prerequisite for really beginning to be able to, connect and live, a lifestyle that can be a lot more free. On a medical astrology level, it rules like neurological diseases, panic attacks, PTSD. So when a person's having a hard time integrating it because there's some trauma or conflict, instead of having a download, it tends to really start to wear on the nervous system. And so that's why I really appreciate this tool, because it demystifies, what a person's going through. So many people feel like they're going nuts. And a lot of times it has to do with Uranus. Like when I see Uranus interacting with the house of Virgo and it's making difficult aspects, because Virgo has a lot to do with physical health and lifestyle. There's definitely people with migraine issues, really severe stomach issues, and definitely always something related to the nervous system or insomnia.
Right. And so especially ADHD too, because it's racing brain syndrome,
Yeah, totally. So to me, it's like if we were dealing with a medical system that could understand this, then they'd be able to help walk a person through these initiations instead of just throw them labels and throw them a pharmaceutical. So
it's a process. Yeah. And that's why I think so many people have gravitated towards plant-based medicine such as ayahuasca, because it cleans out your body, and in cleaning out all of these old toxins and things that feed into this anxiety. And that's that so much of our fear and pain is held in the body. And when you physically purge the body, then it also helps your mental health,
Oh, absolutely. Gosh, I talk about that a lot with my clients. Just, in the physical plane, we can tell what needs cleaning, and it's no big deal. It's just a part of life. We have to dust, we wash our dishes. And if we're not too lazy, we fold our clothes and hang them up. It's just, and a part of the daily maintenance. We wouldn't want a bathroom that isn't cleaned, and taken care of. So we have to remember to do that to all these other levels of our being, because if we don't clear certain things, a person can just get overloaded. And so, yeah, purging is not
Invites
just a physical
Venus,
thing.
you know, Venus loves a clean house. Venus loves a clean car. You know, she wants us to clean out the dust because then, you know, we can bring in the abundance and all of the Lakshmi, you know. And
Right.
yeah, and you also you have a Lakshmi yoga. I was looking at your chart. So you've got very heavy Venusian energy. I noticed one of your posts a couple months ago when you went to, I think it was Cancun or to see the Maya.
Yeah.
They said that your teachings were in line with what they had been teaching about Venus. Just a digression, if you could tie that in really quick, because I think that's so important for people to hear, you know?
Yeah, well, I got invited. I was really, quite amazed. This Mexican woman reached out to me. She had been following my work. And I know she, checks in with all sorts of things on the internet, but her being in the location she's in and spending a lot of time in Chichen Itza, she felt called to pull together a gathering to do some clearing in that particular area. And she just reached out to me and said, hey, you're welcome to come. And we met up with about 4 Mayan elders in this group that mostly were based in Mexico City. So I was the only English speaking person. She was able to translate a little bit for me, but because she had worked at these places and was connected to the museums, she was able to get us access to places that the public will never see. And so we went, like 4 a.m. for a couple days in a row, and we're able to go like at nighttime. We had, guards kind of following us around, but I mean, it was really, really powerful. And not to maybe give too, but like, I wouldn't say I have the most reliable moon cycle anymore, but the minute I got there, boom, there it is. So that was interesting. Not to go into any like personal stuff, whatever.
But it triggered something on a cellular level.
Yeah. Like it really helped to ground, and it just seemed really significant to me, that kind of was a part of it, and just playing drums and just, feeling into the energy of that particular area because of, the way that it lines up with the Venus transits and the fact that the synodic cycles and that information is, in the temples. And that location is all about just tracking the Venus transits. That was really, exciting. So I do have a slide that I'd love to show.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And what's like really interesting is that this Venus energy forms a perfect pentagram in the sky. So when we're dealing with like reversals of the pentagram and the 5th element going into the ground, and how we see that used as symbology with like, I don't want to like name names and make it about like figures, but like the satanic, type thing that is anti-life, that is all about harvesting and doing ritual abuse in order to steal energy to achieve immortality through a very inverted way, using us as the food source, right?
Correct.
So when certain authors and certain like things have been put out there called Sophia's correction, this is what to me is Sophia's correction. It's the part of ourselves that on a heart level are, through the courses of time and the cycles of time, undoing the damage and correcting the reversals by reconnecting with our authentic relationship with spirit. So not only does it form a perfect pentagram in the sky, so this is, every 8 years, Venus alignment with Earth, it also forms a sacred geometry of a rose.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I think there's other pictures that are even more.
And right now, Venus and Uranus are conjunct. So, this is, as I keep telling people, if they sidereally have anything in Aries or in Libra, things are going to get triggered right now, in a good way,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Right. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. And it really does connect us with universal love. It helps us to be in the more galactic chakras, because the 4th chakra on a heart level can get really overwhelmed with astral parasites, overly giving, not knowing how to give to the self.
Boundaries.
What'd you say?
Boundaries.
Right. So when we look at like Libra being all about balance and it being connected to Venus is very much what we're trying to do in this human experience with our own fourth chakra. But when you put like Uranus next to it, it takes us up to the more universal type love energy, which is much more activating instead of, trying to find balance and being, having empathic overload. Uranus to me tends to help us to shield ourselves with light.
Yeah.
Whereas we got to be very
I
careful.
think it's easier to give to, be humanitarian, right? But sometimes it's really hard to give in an interpersonal situation because of karma and, just the awkwardness of human love,
Right. It definitely can be very aloof and detached. It's not really easy to be in a relationship with somebody who has a lot of Aquarian or Uranus energies because they're such free spirits. Nothing really bothers them that much. But then if there's, a squared aspect, just like with any, planet, experiencing the shadow of Uranus can be pretty freaky.
Right. And like what you're talking about with PTSD, a lot of people that have this, it's very easy for them to just fall into that category. I'm just going to give to everybody, but I cannot have a personal relationship because of my trauma, And so
Very
right now, a lot of people are getting faced with, the past. Mercury's retrograde. I mean, we've been dealing with this, I think a lot of this past love stuff is coming up right now for people. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Going retrograde. And yeah, Uranus, the shadow side of Uranus is definitely experiencing that PTSD. It really impacts the nervous system. Yeah. And it can help us upgrade DNA, but it can also keep us in a trauma loop. Yes. So the trauma loop, if a person just goes into detachment and isn't feeling safe to work it out, they can be like the most distance type people and aloof kind of people. And it's hard, for those that are very much in the feeling nature. It's like, tell me what you feel, what's going on. So yeah, but it's pretty cool. Venus conjunct Uranus. Mars is in the mix with Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter.
Pluto just moved. But Jupiter and Mars and South Node, all of these religious fanatics, in politics. But yeah, so let's go on and talk about the next planet, which is Neptune, and how you see.
You're still a little garbly.
Oh, okay. Let me make sure. Okay, can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's talk about Neptune.
Well, Neptune to me connects us with the unseen realms, and there's many multidimensional layers. We got the astral, ether, there's just many, dimensions. So when we sleep at night, we can experience all sorts of things. Sometimes we experience our greater abilities. Sometimes we experience just a bunch of nonsense, just working out unconscious stuff. But I always like to look at the polarity. So if Pisces Neptune is opposite Virgo, Earth sign, this is where if we have integration, we can begin to view our physical lifestyle on the Earth plane from a multidimensional perspective. And so if Neptune's all about the unseen realms and the multidimensional, connecting us to the creative imagination, to me, like the artists and musicians tend to have a strong connection with Neptune. The dreamers, the people that are maybe making contact or able to talk to those on the other side. What's that?
And film.
Yes. Yeah. The ability to kind of be chameleon-like and take on different characters. And it's just like the vastness of, our creativity. And so Virgo being the opposite, if there's a lot that we don't know about in our unconscious, that is maybe some kind of block or ancestral pattern, the Virgo energy is going to show in the physical body some kind of symptom. And that's why, Virgo being the house of health, I tend to like to look at the two to see, okay, if a person has a lot of physical symptoms, is there anything hiding in the unconscious in the Neptune area? So over the course of time, I think, due to transits or if people have personal relationships with the planet Neptune or the 12th house, they begin to shed light on the unconscious, and the unconscious becomes this huge playground and landscape of all possibilities, like the possibilities of an artist. the ability to push the envelope and do what others might think is impossible. The ability to create a vision and dream and then manifest it into the physical plane. But if we don't integrate that to the earth, if we don't connect the two, then we're just kind of like still very much in that duality.
Yeah,
So
we're just dreaming. Yeah, it's like that's the people who just talk about what they're going to do. They don't do what, do what they say.
Right. So connecting it with the earth energy helps people to let go of the matrix overlay and really connect with nature and the fact that the earth is a multidimensional being. And when we can live with that level of integration, we can intuitively see what's wrong with a person. Medical intuitives tend to have, a strong connection between Neptune and Virgo, where their healing practices or the tools and modalities they use or how they work with their intuition, they're the ones that can like spot trauma in a person's body and diagnose people because they can see the energy. Right. So to me, Neptune really connects us with the unseen realms. And if a person has been able to shine light on what others can't see, we are really lifting the veil and able to operate on a much greater level. And I think a lot of medical miracles happen. I mean, I just had a client who was a stage 4 cancer, had a very strong Neptune energy in her 6th house, the opposite planet being in the 6th house. And her North Node was very close to it. And she spontaneously somehow cured herself of, she took stuff, but it was so shocking for the doctors that she went into remission, and it had nothing to do with their conventional way. And when I looked at her chart, I was like, okay, because I learned so much every day. I mean, as you know, there's no end to learning the art of astrology.
That's why I love it. I'm an eternal student.
Me too. And so Neptune also, is self-undoing, right? So people who have addiction issues tend to have a strong Neptune because they're such the dreamers and they're in the mystical realms. It's very, very hard to wake up to this density. And that's why it's always great when people focus on creating a lifestyle that matches, their dreams and their visions for themselves, and not allowing oneself to compromise is huge, because that's a huge game changer. Anybody who's willing to bring this higher awareness into the physical plane and make it a way of life, are really the great shifters. Because like you said, we can dream and imagine all that we want, but when are we actually going to bring it into the physical and manifest? It's like having the blueprint of a building or a house that one might want to build. It's the pipe dream thing. Like, okay, we can dream all we want, but what are we going to do about it? Right. And so when we're looking at like epidemics and stuff like that, to me, the Neptune is very much what I think shamans work a lot with, being able to be in the unseen worlds, connect with spirit at all these different levels and layers, and, pull out things that might have gotten stuck somewhere along the way.
Right. We've been deceiving ourselves, because the negative.
Totally. The shadow of Neptune. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The shadow of Neptune is very much about deception, not being able to tell the difference between fantasy and fact, and being very like confused and in a sort of fog. It's definitely like, the shadow of Neptune's a tough one. Like, if it's in a relationship house and it forms a squared aspect, I'm always worried, that person might be with a deceiver or somebody who might, have an affair or betray them. And you got to be so careful about what you say to people.
Right. Because sometimes they're not ready to hear it. And you don't want to be, there's so much counseling that has to go in with reading a chart. You can't just the truth, that's,
Right. I more ask questions, and just say, careful of rose-colored glasses, hold a person at arm's length and make sure you really get a real sense of them. Because, eventually somebody with like Neptune in the 7th house is, probably going to meet.
You read my mind. I was just thinking Neptune in the 7th, you better be careful. Do not marry this person until that planet gets, if it's transiting, if it's the 7th,
Yeah, if it's a fixed one, if it's well aspected, that's a good thing. But if not, that's not an easy one. And like Mars square Neptune, that's a tough one, because the ego keeps like manifesting things that it's not fully like, I don't know. I've known some narcissists with that particular placement, but we don't have to go there. But that's my assessment.
They're very, very charming, and they cast what's called a glamour. Glamour means, to deceive someone and to put the rose-colored glass on them, And what I've also noticed about Neptune is that, especially if it's in the sixth house, it can indicate allergies, and especially allergies to seafood.
Oh my gosh, totally. An afflicted Neptune in the sixth house is totally chemical sensitivity, allergies. Absolutely. Yep, I noticed that.
So it's like, they say Neptune is a higher octave of Venus,
Right.
And so that pulls in the musical ability as well, that.
Yeah. And the need for boundaries big time because, Neptune Pisces has that unbelievable empathicness, selflessness, and that's why it can be so hard. And a lot of people struggling with addiction have, afflicted Neptune. It's so
And I
interesting.
find a lot of people that, that consider themselves star seeds, that, they're not from here. Their Neptune is going to be involved in that somehow. It's going to be prominent. It's going to be maybe by itself, lonely, but people that really, identify, as not from here, will have some kind of Neptune prominent.
Oh yeah. I get concerned, and my kids that have this placement, and it's, obviously generational. It probably rules about a 2-year period. Well, probably a little less, maybe a year. Because Saturn moves signs, I think, every 2 years. But the Saturn square Neptune is just a really tough one because they're so different. And if they're not in harmony, it's not an easy one. So I'm glad I know, being their mother, because I try and make up for the limitations that come along with that.
Or give them healthy alternatives. That's the thing. It's like, if they're going to have a propensity to run for the drugs, make food medicine, teach them about food is medicine,
Oh yeah.
Like,
fortunately they're all into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Something positive.
Yeah. It can feel very defeating though, when you want to like manifest your dreams. The Saturn, kind of control. It tends to undermine that vastness. This is a really tough time for kids to be coming of age. I mean, it's like we're in like end times madness, but we're like on the verge of like a huge breakthrough as a humanity. And this generation has been so targeted. I mean, we all have, but it's like there's no way to really pretend it's not there. And that's not good either, the ignorance bliss thing. And I think, you and I probably have in common the fact that we knew something was up before it was obvious to many. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were some of the first indigo kids back in the 70s and 80s. That's the thing. Like, what I've noticed is that, yes, I do believe vaccinations trigger a lot of the autism and a lot of the behavioral spectrum, but I do believe that there has to be something latent in the DNA that gets triggered, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're here to teach us. So they're not messed up. And when you actually is autistic or Down syndrome or something, they're different, but there's nothing wrong with them. So they're here to show us.
Oh, your sound's coming out again.
They're here to show us different multidimensional ways of existing here.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. One of my favorite quotes is, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society." So when you think of the amount of labels being thrown at so-called, kids that are different, they're just holding pieces that we need to understand and awaken to. Because if we look at the whole zodiac wheel, 12 houses, 12 signs, and then the Ophiuchus, we're all carrying different recipes of these elemental relationships. And to deny any expression, no matter how unusual it might seem, is denying a huge part of ourselves. And that's where the oneness really is for me, where diversity and harmony is oneness. And the zodiac map and the uniqueness of it. Now they use the word snowflake for like some negative word connected to, I don't know, I can't even remember what it means, but I'm like, you stole my, that's the metaphor I loved using for astro charts. Now if I say snowflake, people, there's a completely different like jargon or term for it. I can't remember what it is, but
I mean, basically it's a derogatory way of saying people that are oversensitive, that they're, it's like a snowflake Democrat, somebody who
right.
can melt it, it's a new way of saying, bleeding from your heart Democrat, whatever, which is, so silly. But I think that, when you see Neptune involved with, like you said, Saturn and some different things, different house placements, this is going to show this, this being different. They want to identify. And especially now, with, gender being so negotiable, that also, because that can show, Mercury is like the neutral gender planet. But I think
what?
having Mercury is the neutral gender planet, but having Neptune prominent, it somehow will also show different genders as well. And so that's something I've noticed in charts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an interesting one. I'm all about just people being authentic and true to themselves. I get a little bit worried at the grooming of young children and some of these
suggestion, the power of suggestion.
Yeah. Like, where does one draw the line? Because it seems like there's a lot of amazing breakthroughs, but there's dark agendas that want to mimic that and twist it in a way that can become potentially detrimental. And it's hard to call it out because one can be misunderstood for not appreciating the uniqueness of one. So this is a really tough thing that we're up against, because there is social engineering. There is those projects are real, these patented technologies, Project Mockingbird, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And so it's tough because sometimes people get overly conspiracy theory with things, and then there's a lot of psyops to make it harder to know what's truth and what's not, to muddy the waters. But then if you're coming from a well-intentioned place and a person's concerned about something, it's really hard to say anything without offending a lot of people.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing. We live in such a social media world. It's hard to tell how far the power of suggestion goes into, any part of our identity, whether it be race, nation, or gender. And that's why I tell, I got my master's in ethnomusicology and studied anthropology, and,
I didn't know that.
Talked about race and nation and gender. And you know what? I'm so bored with talking about humans that way. I really think that I get stuck in those paradigms of division. We're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next planet, which is Pluto. So how do you see, especially now because we've got Saturn and Pluto together, how do you see Pluto in a chart when you're working with clients?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know my exact birth time, but I have a strong connection with Pluto, Scorpio energies in the Western chart. So yeah, I feel very well versed in the Pluto realm. So Pluto, death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. It rules the reproductive organs. It connects with our sexual energy, but it reminds us that sexual energy is multifaceted. It connects with our creative energy. It connects with our spiritual energy. And when we look at like Kundalini, and the awakening of that part of ourselves and the journey that we have to take in order to really connect with what that is, which I don't know. I don't want to, define it and create a fixed opinion about it. But, to me, Pluto is going into the underworld. And once you find that inner light, even if nothing else shows up to offer you a helping hand, then you're initiating into like the caterpillar, into the butterfly. Then you can emerge this beautiful, embodiment that you had to just rely on, like trusting something that is not explainable. Like, how do you explain how a caterpillar can create a cocoon and then come out this beautiful butterfly? So it's that mysterious energy that connects with the regenerative power of nature, the capacity to bounce back and, come back to life and regenerate. And we can go through so many Pluto cycles and so many deaths while maintaining the same body, that to me, it begins to help us to lift the veil between life and death. So I really connect Venus with Pluto because the morning evening star, has that kind of going into the underworld, the mythologies of the divine feminine and, Inanna and Magdalene with, some of the experiences with the 7 chakra, kind of 7 gates of hell, and having to go through that initiation. And even certain practices in ancient times where they would induce snake bites or they would induce death just to go on that journey. And that the whole journey was about mastering how to open these gateways so that the division between life and death and this whole sort of invention of like heaven and hell, you know, would be resolved within the person, which would allow for a transformation, and the ability to hold the energy of the crone. You know, to me, the maiden mother crone journey is very much about, okay, you're just walking along, everything's fine, and then boom, Pluto comes along and like throws a person into a death cycle, which can be very daunting. Some people feel incredibly suicidal when they're going through it. And then, you know, there's that opportunity to like not be chained to that confusion and feeling of loss and feeling victimized by the things that might have pushed you in the energies of death. And once you reconcile that, it's like the phoenix rising. So Pluto's really powerful, but it's not an easy one. I've learned to find comfort in it. But the crazy thing is, when I was like feeling like I was in the underworld for a good 20 years or so, and then I was not even like in this dimension, I could not get back into my body. When I finally got back into my body, I thought like, phew, that's done. I got a tattoo, the labyrinth. I'm like, okay, we're done with the whole Pluto thing. No. It's more like, yeah, like you might as well get a condo in the underworld because you're going to go back again and again. And I used to like avoid pomegranates, right? Because I was thinking of that myth, like, oh my God, Persephone never got out of the underworld. And there's that whole pomegranate thing. And now I drink pomegranate juice and I've just, because it's so like anti-inflammatory, and why not? But yeah, so I got a special relationship with Pluto. It can be very, very intense when it's afflicted. The shadow side of Pluto, man, those are the control freaks. They're obsessive. They can be pretty freaking scary. So I'm really glad that I have a lot of that Venus energy. And because of the Libra, at least in the Western chart, I've always felt like I have arm floaties in the abyss. You know, there's so much Pluto. But it's really, you know, kind of frightening. And so I think religions have, you know, turned it into like hell. And our job and part of how the divine feminine power is coming back is to take that projection away and allow it to be the cauldron of creation, and where, you know, we rebirth, and where it's the womb, right?
It is, you know, Pluto is fear too, and it is facing your fears, you know, to transform. And I've just looked at your sidereal chart. Your Pluto is in the 12th house.
I don't know if that's my birth time, though, is the thing.
Oh, right.
My mom said like 3 in the afternoon. My father said like 10 a.m. And based on putting my chart with other people, like partners, I came up with 11:15 because it seemed right. But it
seemed right. Well, so what we do in Vedic is, if we don't know the time of birth, we make the moon, the house that the moon is in, the moon chart. We take the moon and we make that the first house.
Oh, okay.
And so from your moon chart, Pluto is in your 12th house, and that's, you know, 12th house, we say it can be a prison, it can be a hospital, or it can be a temple. It's up to you.
Exactly.
And with your sun and your Uranus there, you're a leader. You are shining the light into the abyss, saying, you know what, follow me. I can, you know, I'm going to do this.
These gateways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an everyday maintenance thing. I don't know. I'm always amazed how much I can still dip into places that I thought like I had overcome, but it's fine. I mean, I think it's part of the adventure, and you know, like
you're not alone. That's the thing. You're not alone. You are a voice for so many that are going through the same thing and are afraid to speak about it. That's your gift, is that you are able to communicate what's going on in the dark, you know? And you're like, hey, you know what? I got the flashlight, you know, we're going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know?
Out of batteries, everybody. Oh my gosh. Sorry. No. I mean, it's such a mutual thing. And I mean, I just feel this incredible. I'm so grateful. Because it has been very lonely. And when I was going through the underworld, I really didn't have any friends. And it was just like single parenting, lost the father of my kids. It was like one thing after another, and like really feeling I was like losing it. And I vowed, you know, if I ever get out of this, I will do everything I can to hold people's hands through this. You know, obviously we can't do it for people, but we can certainly make it easier and give a person a soul to soul, spirit to spirit hello, and remind each other we aren't alone. And I'm reminded all the time, and I do forget sometimes. It's so surreal to wake up and be like, I can just like go on Facebook and there's like family, and like, it's just, I don't think I'll ever get used to it. But what are your thoughts about, okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but that's why everyone loves you, is because you're not afraid to speak your fears. And what I'm feeling, other people are feeling, and you are able to express that. And that helps people so much.
Oh, thank you.
Know? So don't ever forget that. It's, you know, if you're feeling, oh my God, I shared too much or whatever, blah, 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 you know what? Somebody out there who was afraid to say that, and they saw that you said that, and now they feel more comfortable in their own skin, you know?
Well, that's a good thing. That's kind of what I figure, and it's worth it. But I definitely, you know, I'm working on my triggers and knee-jerk reactions to things, and we're all working on a lot of stuff.
Who isn't? I mean, come on, man. You know?
No, I
Who's
know.
perfect? Nobody is perfect. You know, we're all waking up every day with bedhead going, who the hell is that?
I definitely would win the award for the most insane bedhead, I feel. So
I don't know. Mine's pretty funny. I braid my hair at night and I wake up in the morning and it's like the top part is like created a crown.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
yeah, no, I mean, I just feel like, you know, you help a lot of people by being real and being yourself and being authentic to yourself. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So those are the 3 outer planets. Now let's talk about briefly, you know, what you mean by the return of the cosmic ether.
Well, the ether being the 5th element, I will put up something to give people a visual, has been in reversals. Like, we've been dealing with an artificial tree of life template that is keeping us looping in this physical density. Certain stargates on the planet have been damaged because of these beings that have compromised their DNA on purpose in order to control humanity through harvesting life force in order to create, you know, immortality, but in a service to self sort of way. So that loss of connection to spirit has caused certain entities to choose to feed off of humans and create this vampiric system to keep us kind of in this like container. And so the ether energy had to be put in a reversal code so that we would age and die and not have that ability to regenerate very easily and have organic immortality over the course of time as our galactic memories and abilities start to come back online, which they should be right now, but we're still, you know, we're dealing with these agendas and it can be very, very difficult and distracting. So the return of the cosmic ether has to do with, and it doesn't really, like, I don't do chart readings on this because from what I've come to understand, the sun didn't start to move through the 13th sign until 2010. And there's no way to really, like, you know, unless the child is born after 2010, it doesn't really, we don't have to change people's charts because of this 13th sign. But I haven't been able to find any software that's going to include the 13th sign to even be able to do an overlay of the transit. So instead of worrying about that.
Can I inject something? Afterward, I will show you the nakshatras and I'll show you how Ophiuchus is included in the lunar mansions. It's actually in a part of Libra called Vishaka. It's on the verge of Scorpio and Libra, but it's included in the Vedas.
Oh, good. I thought it was in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. No?
Well, I'll show you on the nakshatras because, you know, we are using, you know, 23.5 degrees behind.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd love to see that. But from what I understand is the reason I haven't just gone out of my way to put that in my session space is because it only really counts for kids born after 2010. Okay. So if somebody, you know, comes with a kid that's born after 2010, I would, you know, probably be pushed to really explore and research that more. So I'm really glad I brought it up because I really want to, you know, move into that and, you know, really like learn more about the Vedic system. So anyway, but it doesn't really count for people before 2010. But I bring that into just my presentations as like a huge piece, because if you think about it, 12 zodiacs, 6 and 6 are going to have their opposites. Ophiuchus doesn't have an opposite. It really connects us with the 0 point, and it's the only astrological sign that is ruled by fire, water, which is like the ether element, and it's connected to Chiron, the wounded healer. And the 5th element, the quintessence of the mother energy, and the themes are creatrix connectivity, pure transparent crystalline light, divine mother, and the cleansing power of cosmic love, recoding of DNA, aligning to the cosmic heart of Lyra in Andromeda. And so when we first had, these galactic wars in Lyra, which stepped down to the Orion Wars, we split away from Andromeda. And we've been in this fallen system. And now in this ascension time, the galactic cores are connecting again. And that has allowed this reversal to be corrected. And then the Venus transits with the pentagram is also part of that correction to like realign the elements with the 5th element, kind of like our crowns, being able to receive and purifying our inner elements without it being hijacked by false belief systems or implants or anything that might have made things hard. But the thing is, it hasn't been just about that. It's the fact that a lot of cataclysms and exploded planets threw the planetary body off its axis. And so from what I've come to understand is, at least in the Western chart, the sun hasn't moved through Ophiuchus and since like Lumerian times. And now what is returning, when we look at like the whole divine feminine power returning, has a lot to do with that ether element. And what it does is it allows the circulation to be returned that corrects the reversals. But every single person has a purpose to make sure that they do that kind of inner work, because it's not something that we just wake up and like, oh, okay, we're all fixed. Because if we're still watching too much television and we're allowing the propaganda and programs to get in our system and it infects our creative channels, it doesn't matter how much ether is available, we're completely distracted. Right. So I like to bring attention to it, kind of like take what resonates and leave the rest sort of kind of thing. I'm just trying to pull together as much as I can. And there's still, so much to learn. Right. That's why I love talking to somebody like you. So anyway, if this is an opportunity and we're being pushed to the edge right now. Yeah. So we either create a virus of love and truth that spreads and we have that 100th monkey and we raise the vibration, or we really, get caught in this south node, which is very difficult in our own personal lives when we're trying to head towards the north node. Right. Even if it's a comfort level, it's not always good. It's like a negative security blanket. Like it's easy.
It's what we've already been good at in past lives. What we're here to do is the north node. That's our destiny in this life,
Right, and it's in the sign of Cancer, and with all the lunar distortions and the artificial component between Saturn and the moon, it's very interesting to have the south node in Capricorn Saturn with the north node and the moon, when we're dealing with those two celestial bodies being the biggest areas where this artificial intelligence is sourced out of. Right. So to me, with these outer planets, it gives us the opportunity to neutralize and break down those dark technologies and to get to those higher octaves, like, Venus to Neptune, the moon to the higher octave, which I heard is, some say is Uranus, is the higher octave of the moon. But to reach further than that limiting, program. And to me, that's how we heal and sort of time travel and sort of heal and redeem these galactic wars and the impact that they've had on us and the fragmentation that we experience. Because, if we were on a planet that blew up, we were blown off the grid and we, shattered. And, when we look at the asteroid belt, we're all carrying a piece of this fragmentation that we're trying to reintegrate. So what's interesting is this month, we're going to have a sun conjunct Chiron and also Lilith at the end of the month. I just saw. And I just saw this. So I'm like, this will be good. This is needed. What are your thoughts on that archetype, Lilith?
Well, I mean, she's the dark feminine, right? She's the related to Kali, the goddess of destruction, and Niriti actually is associated with the galactic center. And in the Vedas, it comes from the galactic center. And so, like if this is the galactic center, and this is our sun, it's traveling and spiral around.
I don't know what's wrong with the sound.
Oh, is it
If
going
you could
off
say that
again?
again.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say the galactic center is where the ether comes from, and that is associated with anti-construction. Certainly, the south node of the moon is in Sagittarius right now, and that's associated. It's in the nakshatra called Mula. Mula means associated with the galactic center. So it's like, you know, this ether. We're being flooded with this ether right now, and especially as our solar system is, you know, in line with the galactic plane. So if this is the galactic plane, the way we're traveling is in a spiral. You know, sometimes we're conjuncted, sometimes we're like 1,000 years below, and then we come back up, and then we go 10,000 years above, and it goes like this all the way around. And that whole rotation is a yuga. And right now we're in Kali Yuga, which is like the darkest, you know. But the thing is that we're heading towards that galactic plane. So when in 10,000 years, you know, I think it's like, actually, I think we're at about 11 because we have to go down and then go up. But once we are there, that's the golden age. That's when we flood ether. So like, that's why we flooded on the so light years.
Oh gosh.
Did it go out?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I don't know if you're a good editor of video, but maybe there can be inserts or some sort of where we could have it like written, you know, some sort of transcript. I can always see if my editor person can.
Oh, I can do it. No, it's okay. It's, you know, Mercury retrograde's been messing with me. I had to get a new power cord for my computer, and it's not big enough. And so for some reason, my computer is saying it doesn't want to match it. Mercury retrograde is messing with me. But the point is that, you know, the ether is coming from the galactic center. So when we are in line with the galactic plane, we have more ether coming towards us.
Right. And that is what has created the correction. It's with all these different cataclysms that have happened over the course of time, you know, it's sort of like, you know, going into physical therapy. You know, the planet has slowly made its way back in alignment, like, you know, after cosmic catastrophes and earthly, you know, catastrophes and power generator crystal explosions beneath the Earth's surface and misuse of dark technology and the abuse of power through, you know, just what can happen in a free will universe, you know, how people play with power and overly experiment. And that's also part of the shadow of Uranus, is these dark technologies and just the whole technological age connected to transhumanism and, you know, 5G. So that would be the shadow. So when we look at, like, you know, moving into the Aquarian age, there is that darker, you know, potential or possibility. And we want that Uranus to instead, you know, wake us up and ignite our dormant DNA instead of have a AI mimicker supplement that for us until it destroys all biological life. But yeah, so the galactic center being in alignment, Andromeda, Milky Way connecting, has corrected these reversals. And the tactic now is, how can we throw people into their lower chakras, create a fight or flight response, and put people in panic so they're not grounded, they're distracted away from receiving these transmissions and igniting this truth within ourselves. And we got to be so careful. It's like we have to be prepared, but at the same time, it's like we don't want all this to drag us away from the real true medicine that's available because of where we are and where we can go. I mean, right. What do you sense in what you're getting about where we're heading as a humanity? I mean, you know, I talked to somebody the other day that really put a doom and gloom spin on it, saying we're not an ascending planet anymore. This is actually, you know,
oh, it's a slave planet, and, you know,
I mean,
and blah blah blah. It's so negative, you know. I don't know. I always try to stay positive, and, you know, like we were talking before about in 5 years what's going to happen, and we have 2 solar eclipses going over the United States again. One is October 16th, 2023.
Yeah, your sound.
Oh God.
No, but I heard you. Yeah, the eclipse is coming up. What about like a solar event? You know, these things that
well, I mean, if, you know, right now, I mean, if you just look at the astronomical, you know, like what's going on with our sun, a grand solar minimum right now, which means we're not having a lot of solar flares right now. Our sun is not particularly active. You know, if you have a solar flare, you know, a 10, even a 7 and above, with that CME coming towards Earth, you know,
I don't know what your sound. It's such a bummer. I want to hear what you have to say.
But basically, the solar flares are what I'm paying attention to.
Right. Now I can hear you. Yeah. Right. Definitely. And then there's the whole Schumann resonance and everything. So, I mean, you know, in a lot of ways, it really, I feel it comes down to the individual. I do feel also, you know, we're dealing with the collective, but if the collective is not ready to wake up on a massive scale, I don't think the ones that are awakened are at the mercy of them not allowing it, you know? And that's where I see, you know, a potential bifurcation. This phantom Earth is just going to kind of like, you know, fall away, and those that are just really, you know, connecting are just going to, you know, move through these gateways. But I'm like you. I hold a positive feeling, and I like to interpret the planetary alignments from their higher octaves, even though, you know, they can be worked from the negative in a way that infects, you know, the minds of people. But with the ether now available, it's like people's soul essence is stepping forward and saying, whoa, wait a second. You know, right now, if we don't make the wise choices, it's like an alarm is ringing in people's inner self, like, because there's too much at stake. You know, so when we look at some of the abduction scenarios, they seem to be further down the phantom artificial intelligence, artificial timeline trajectory that have come back to try and gain the genetic material and the soul matrix hosts through whoever they might abduct in order to repair themselves from those kind of choices that have gone into the AI or artificial intelligence. So if we can time travel in that way and try and make up for those kind of choices, to me, this is a huge crossroads to just make the good choices now. So we don't have to end up becoming something that has to make up for buying into something that promised maybe utopia or a better world. But, you know, as we see with the cabal, they'll create the problem and solution, and then the solution is a part of enslaving people even more. And so, yeah, major choices are happening right now. And that's kind of what my webinar was about, the timeline wars, and how it's really like we have to make a choice. And if enough of us make the right choice, it can have that 100th monkey effect and really, you know, ripple. And let's just hope that this administration and where the political part is going is going to drop that false aspect of it that has kept people conquered and divided, and just really focus in on how to take down the deep state and really stand for human sovereignty without it being like muddied by the political bullshit.
Right. Well, that's how people know, you know, is right, left, up, down, you know, these duality. Right. It's just it's another expression of duality.
Right. So, and that's I think where the real work is. And it's not going to be solved on the world stage. That can't be the example. And that's what's so wonderful about how many of us are out there speaking and doing shows, you know, like you. And I'm putting more material out there as far as videos. It's like, you know, we're generating, you know, frequencies into the environment, and just what comes through just these kind of conversations, I feel, is way more potent than just sitting back watching TV waiting for this governmental thing to be figured out. But I like to put faith in some of the things happening in this administration. But I'm always shocked when I am in a hotel and I stick on the television, and it's just like nothing's changed for 20 years. The same stupid pharmaceuticals being pushed, the same nonsense. It's just unbelievable. But
commercials are so bad. I'm like, really? Somebody's getting paid for this? Pay me. I will give you a much better commercial than half the stuff that's out there. Trust me, after having the flu for 2.5 weeks and being in bed and watching TV, I'm like, I cannot believe people are getting paid for these commercials.
I know. I mean, there's subtle like improvements, like going to the airport, there's organic snacks and better things on the menu. And I mean, there's definitely like a lot of like big improvements, you know, medical marijuana being available. But yeah, it'll be great when the box really reflects a more awakened, you know, culture, and the fake news channels are just, you know, really taken down. It's just amazing the level of denial though. But yeah, so I don't know. I could easily just kind of like be chatty for a while, and I don't want
I
to.
know. I love talking to you. No, I think we've gone over a lot. You know, we talked about the outer planets and about your new work with the return of the cosmic ether, and you know how you feel about the divine feminine. I think it's really important.
Yeah, to
And
me, just really being embodied in like oneness with cosmic and earth energies, connected to natural cosmic laws, really just being in our heart center and just remembering, you know, our power of birthing and just our connection to the planetary consciousness and the importance of not settling for any less than a person who is willing to shed the programmed male archetype, you know, and then vice versa. I mean, I've seen, as I know have, women who really carry that patriarchal energy, and they're like, it's not really gender specific. It's a programming that's impacted both sides. But the feminine power needs to come back to have that compassion and that nurturing to help disarm those programs and help us all feel safe. And so that's what's wonderful. But I always see it as a union. But because that energy has been so compromised and lost to people, it needs a bit of extra attention right now.
like what Chief says, you know, the earth belongs to the grandmothers because the grandmothers don't want war. And they know that all children are their children. Doesn't matter what race or nation they come from. You know, grandmothers want all children to thrive and to be healthy.
You know,
And
and
that's
this,
the energy
yeah.
we need to pull in.
Right. And the unconditional love, you know, when we can see things as family and children and relatives and elders, you know, and just see the family aspect of it all. It's easy to hold the unconditional love and just wait. It's just like that, you know, the arms are open until they're ready to come home. And
Yeah.
and to keep that duality alive of you're the enemy, you're the bad guy. I mean, that's no better than, I mean, it's still feeding into the war and the duality. And ultimately, to me, we have to win the war within, and then we'll start to create better space and permission for others to, you know, do the same without it being, you know, threatening.
Well, this way, wherever I travel, I always tell myself, you know what? Everyone is family. And if you treat everyone like family, you're safe. There's an energy, is a frequency that comes off of you that it is inclusive and makes people comfortable. And they know that, you know, you're safe with them, your family, you know, and if you just hold that resonance, you are safe wherever you go. And that's why I really think because I've gotten myself into some really, you know, I was really naive when I was younger, and I got myself into some bad situations several times, you know, but just holding that energy of your family, you're my sister, you know, why wouldn't I be concerned about you?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Right. And it just, it smooths the rough edges, and it just allows for a much more expansive heart, compassion, the desire to be present. And that's everything. And you know, what's crazy, just when we look at the world wars and everything that's gone on throughout history and the rewritten history has really ended up just with the goal of pitting us against each other and breaking that feeling of, you know, family bonds. And it's just so important to be holding that. So, you know, that's what strengthens me, is just knowing that this is being kept alive through conversations like this, that we're generating these intentions and these energies into the world by being willing to create these conversations. Because it's funny, if I don't talk, and it's not like I ever thought that I would be, you know, a public person. I mean, I knew that I had a lot to say. I just didn't, I don't know. But I realized like how healing it is to have the opportunity to speak and have these conversations. Because when I don't, I really do just start to feel like almost disorientated, and there's just so much coming in and trying to sort it out. And I definitely always recommend, after I look at a chart to see if a person's really called to do that, just setting our voices free, like you said. I mean, that's so huge. Because, it's toxic to hold on to negative patternings from ancestors, from societal, programs, but it's just as toxic to repress our gifts and abilities out of fear of what others might think. We have to set everything free, but find an appropriate channel, of course, for it.
And, depression is nothing more than anger that's been pushed down.
Absolutely, yeah. And pain is like blocked creativity and potential that is just lodged in the body, like, set me free. Give me love. Exactly. And we're so busy like medicating it and like fearing it that we get further away from ourselves, when really it's an opportunity to get to know ourselves and love ourselves more.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, Laura. I so enjoyed my time with you, and I'm so grateful that you've come. Finally, I'm so sorry about yesterday. We had this Mercury retrograde mix up. We thought it was yesterday, but it was actually.
Oh, no, it's perfect. Absolutely.
But I am so grateful, and I know that my intention of doing these videos is to help people, especially to help women, get more in contact with, their inner guru, because in Vedic astrology, Jupiter and Venus are the teachers. They're the gurus, but they hate each other. And so... I mean, Jupiter is the professor, right? He's, in the ivory tower, costs a lot of money. He doesn't teach everybody, But it's very, it's the real stuff. It's very traditional. Venus, she'll teach anybody. She charges too. But like Jupiter doesn't like her because, she will teach anybody. She doesn't care about what part of society you're from.
Right. Like, doesn't care about status. Jupiter probably thinks you're kind of flighty and What'd you say?
That's why Jupiter thinks she's a whore, because she'll teach anybody, and she charges money for it. But you know what? He charges money too. Universities cost a lot of money. But it's the two different gurus, and I feel like, we got to reconcile these archetypal dramas within ourselves and
create better stories within, and like heal these relationships within ourselves. I have to remind myself of that. But what's amazing is we can understand those tendencies, similar to, like feeling like, oh God, I just sounded like my mother in that moment, or, because we have inherited, the energies of the pantheons and archetypes as much as we have like our biological parents. And if we could all take it upon ourselves to improve those relationships and emit, a better, version of it, I feel like that is just us being in our evolutionary role. But it's so amazing to see like these dynamics and to understand them, because, when a Venus energy hangs out with a person that's predominantly Jupiter, it's like, what the hell, why is our vibe so weird? And like, why are they doing this? And it takes a lot of intimacy and willingness to work with a person or a partner or a friend when those kind of discomforts come up because of the archetypal energy signature. It's kind of like, can we actually break that, or is it?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, our solar system in antiquity was very different. And I don't know if you know about the electric universe theory and the Thunderbolts project group. But I mean, they're basically proving that the petroglyphs and the mythology of our ancestors were proving that our solar system was very different, and that Saturn was actually our sun.
Yeah.
And when the sun, as we know it, came in, that created this whole archetypal drama.
Yes, the Titans and Olympians.
These are grahas. These are what we call the grahas. Grahas are conscious beings. They are the planets. So, they're not just, rocks in the sky or
they've got
gas. These are entities with a celestial story. And these are our ancestors, the planets. And so
absolutely.
Yeah, and they're changing just as we're changing. It's not, our solar system is not fixed. And so when we are open to this idea, then I think it helps us to see how humanity is shifting.
Yes, I totally see us in this co-creation, and to me it's like musical notes, learning how to play the orchestra and music together in a beautiful way and accepting these, different qualities. And yeah, and Saturn, I just feel a very revengeful energy connected to it, and how it has become the lead. It used to be a sun, and some of these, wars that have created this this very revengeful, kind of agenda, and all the refugees from, these exploded planets that have sought to keep the masculine and feminine out of balance, because we become the best food source when we're not in harmony. And so we're working major energy, and I love gaining the knowledge through the planets. So it's so great to talk to another astrologer. My God.
Yeah. But the beauty of Shani, or Saturn, is that he is holding our karma. And so once we learn to work, he just wants us to work, and he gives the best rewards if we do work.
Saturn, there's so many great qualities to Saturn.
But in his younger phase, he was more rebellious. But as he grows older, he's kind of like the elder who tells the young bucks to cool it,
Well, there's structure, yeah.
Done there, and
Say
so he's been there and he's done that, so he can tell the young bucks to calm down, delay and to be patient, and that's
every planet has initiations. And I would say the seriousness and controller tendencies of Saturn become the methodical baby steps that build something that's successful, that has a root system, that becomes the teacher master. Like here, work with this law of structure. But yeah, totally.
Yeah. So that's he still has a function. But Sun outshines everybody. He's the star. So nobody wants to be in his shadow, especially Venus. So.
Oh my gosh, I swear I could talk to you forever. These are my favorite kind of conversations. I hope I didn't cut you off though about the Saturn thing. I just got really excited because it's so easy to look at Saturn as the dominator and controller. We don't have to be victims to any of these frequencies and energies. It's up to us to decide how to work with the highest expression of it.
Well, Saturn is the adult. He just wants us to grow up. That's all.
Well, it's kind of like it's the fatherly energy that has tried to play that role of authority, and unfortunately that role got abused by the lesser beings that kind of turned it into the lead. It's kind of like the shadow of Venus, the shadow of Mercury. Okay, there's all this noise in the background, and my son just showed up.
But it's like, it kind of makes you have compassion for Saturn when you see how he's been treated. And it's like, then we can have compassion for our own self, that own part of ourself. So
Totally. We have to honor Saturn. It rules the teeth, the bones, the structure. We just need to get out of where it's suppressing us and crushing us, and allow it to be the container to bring in our divine multidimensional energies and act as that structure that can hold it, like a beautiful home that has structure instead of something that is trying to squash us. And it really, really depends on us and how we choose to relate to it. And Uranus is very helpful because it helps us to rebel. But if we, keep rebelling, we get exhausted. So we got to come back to Saturn.
Right. Well, in the Vedas, Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. And his Mula-Trikaya sign,
isn't that interesting?
Is actually Aquarius. So Saturn functions best as an air sign, not as an earth sign. And so this is his humanitarian side. This is, the rebel who grew up and became an activist,
This is so important. I swear. I want to trade and do a podcast with you just to continue with this sort of stuff. We might repeat a lot that we talked about here, but I'd love to expose people to your wisdom and to have these kind of conversations. And maybe
he's my guy. He's my Atma Karaka, or my planet of highest degree. And so it's really my soul essence, like who I am is Saturn, and that's something that I've had a hard time coming to grips with as well, because my Saturn's in Aries, which is his sign of debilitation. So it's like, but now, I finally have come to terms with him, and now I just want to be a workhorse,
Yeah, no, I love, well, my North Node's in Capricorn. My mom was a Capricorn. my Saturn's in Cancer. So I have sort of that, you know, very authoritarian and strict kind of, yeah, but I have so much respect for Saturn. When I see a healthy Saturn in a person's chart, or so I have so much respect for the amount of work that Saturn puts us through. It's the trials and tribulations of life. And the reason people don't like it is because they're getting, you know, tested in a way. There's nothing negative about the planet Saturn. It's up to us to create a healthy relationship to all these planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what were you going to say?
Saturn, you know, humans want instant gratification. And so when they can't have that, that's Saturn saying, no, it's delayed. You have to work harder. You have to be patient. Nobody wants to be told that, you know?
Yeah, no, I think Saturn is one of the most important things that we understand. And I have to be very careful of focusing on the dark aspects of Saturn, because I'm not polarized in that way. I think I'm just trying to help people to move on from, you know, where it kind of rules the control system and repression and energy blocks.
But remember,
but my slides always say, you know, the higher aspects of it too. Like, okay, this is, you know, taking us into the teacher or master.
Right. Well, and if you realize that those are ideas that were put upon him.
I'll be right there.
You know, that those were ideas that were put upon him. So he is as much enslaved by these dark ideas as we are. You know, Shani he's called Shani in the Vedas. Shani doesn't want to be enslaved by these dark ideas. So as we liberate ourselves, we are also liberating him.
Well, this is exactly what this time is about. And so, you know, and when I see certain people's chart, I'm like, you're enlightening Saturn. You're bringing the best of that Saturn energy out. And like,
Air. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like the shadow of Neptune, self-undoing and addiction, you know, if we were to only focus on the shadow side of it and not appreciate the beauty that it represents, I mean, every single planet has to be understood for the fullness of what it represents, not just the darker aspects. I mean, the thing is, these darker beings utilize the energies of these planets for their own purposes and means. Exactly. It has nothing. So it has totally enslaved Saturn. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm getting all fired up. But yeah, so I know
it's compassion. We have compassion for Saturn, knowing that, you know?
Absolutely. I have a lot of respect for Saturn.
Well, honey, I'm going to let you go. I know you've got to eat dinner and things are going on there. So I just want to say thank you so much. I've enjoyed our talk so much. And I will, so your website, if people want to book a reading with you, they can go to.
Yeah, I'm mostly just working with subscribers, but all the information is there. It's cosmicgaia.org. And would you want to come on and have me do an interview with you for my channel?
I would love it. I would love it.
Okay, cool. I love talking about this kind of stuff. And it's very, very important. I think it's going to be, you know, really helpful. So I look forward to that. And I thank you
too, you know, because there's such a divide. Helpful for astrology too. There's such a divide between Western astrologers and Vedic astrologers. And I mean, the whole point of doing this is to help people. So if we're fighting about systems and zodiacs and stuff like that, we're missing the point, you know?
No, we need to combine. I mean, I'm all about just connecting the dots. Everything has its place, but the dots need to connect. And that's what I just love doing with you, and I look forward to creating another opportunity for this. And thank you so much for having me. I know the noise has been a little bit odd, so I hope you know, I've been trying to hear some of with the tech issues, but when the Mercury retrograde's over, we'll have to reconvene. And you are my sister, and I love you so much. So thank you.
I love you too, sweetheart. Thank you so much for everything, and namaste. And until we meet again.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Bye.